voted today, guys. I'm sure everybody knows. This is no surprise. Everybody got their notification on their phone. The House voted. I'm not breaking any news, but the actual vote was 232 to 197 to impeach Donald Trump. It is the first time in the history of the United States of America that a president got impeached twice. Never in the history. Okay. And by the way, not for nothing, but it's very rare that a president even gets impeached one time.
Right.
Okay. I mean, we can count on my fingers how many presidents have gotten impeached in the 226 or 246 years of the United States of America. What are we? 1776. Yeah, about 200, almost 250 years. So that makes Trump the first one to be impeached twice. Now, there were 10 votes for impeachment by House Republicans. On the first impeachment, it was straight on party lines. But 10 House Republicans sided with the Democrats and said, enough is enough. Get this pumpkin out.
Yeah.
Okay, the impeachment article now moves to the Senate. We've done this before. Remember, the House of Representatives is the grand jury, so to speak. They're the ones who issue the indictment. So if this was a criminal case, this is the indictment, the impeachment. And now it goes to a criminal trial, which would be in the Senate. It's not really criminal, but it's to remove Donald Trump from power. But it's going to be more a formality than anything else, because by the time the Senate takes it up, he will already not be president anymore. What is very interesting is that if the Senate does convict him, and they need a 2/3 majority, Mitch McConnell. By the way, the Senate is a lot more in favor of impeachment than the House of Representatives, the Republican side at least. So there is a possibility that they can get 2/3 majority. You would need 16 Republican senators out of 50 to vote for impeachment and have Donald Trump removed from power, even though he's no longer the president. If that is the case, if that happens, why is it important? Because then they would have a second vote, which only needs 50% majority. So you would need 51 to 49. And I'm sure all the Democrats would vote in favor of not allowing Donald Trump to ever run for public office again. So the impeachment is important in the sense that you can make an argument that it is very, very important. Even though Donald Trump's no longer going to be the president, he can be barred from ever running for public office again. We'll never have to deal with him ever again. Now, why that's possible is because Mitch McConnell, who's the head Republican senator, the majority leader right now, he will be the minority leader in 7 days when Biden becomes president. Even though the two senators from Georgia are most likely already in the Senate, it's a 50-50 tie. So the tiebreaker goes, Mike Pence breaks the tie. So that's why Mitch McConnell is still in charge. But in 7 days, Chuck Schumer is going to be in charge. But Mitch McConnell, he has said privately to his staff and to others, and he has not gone public and say that these news reports are not true. And these news reports have been out for over a day. He has privately said he wants Trump out.
Wow.
So, and he is the leader of the Senate.
Yeah.
So we will see what happens. Now, Trump is so quiet. He was so quiet because there's no tweets.
Right.
There's no Twitter. You know what?
Messenger bird.
It's actually kind of weird.
You know what? It's actually it's a little soothing.
It is.
It's very soothing. I mean, there's not as much anxiety around this impeachment as the last one, at least, listening to Trump and the tweets, he released, and in the statement he writes, in light of reports of more demonstrations, I urge that there's no more violence, no more law breaking, no vandalism of any kind. It's not what I stand for. It's not what America stands for. I call on all Americans to ease the tensions and calm the tempers. Thank you. Is there any word in his press release that is actually true? He is the one who caused all of this. This press release is just called CYA, cover your ass, you lost, period.
Right.
And now he's trying to cover his ass so he doesn't have criminal liability and he doesn't perhaps have the Senate vote to bar him from ever running for office again. Now, what is very interesting is that yesterday the New York Times detailed Mike Pence's unwillingness Some people are calling him a hero. I'll give you both sides of the coin. Some people are calling Mike Pence a hero because he did not cave to Donald Trump's bullying demands. And I'm quoting Donald Trump when he demanded that Pence overturn the Electoral College because he was in charge of the vote on that day, on January 6th, 1 week ago. Trump told him in a very heated conversation, you can either go down in history as a patriot or you go down in history as a pussy. And Mike Pence, he followed the law. I'll tell you what I think in a second, okay? Mike Pence followed the law. He did not cave to Donald Trump because he could have, and had he done so, we would have had a constitutional crisis because the Electoral College would not have voted in favor of Donald Trump. It would have been a situation where the Electoral College perhaps would have voted against the will of the people. I would make a bigger case for the Secretary of State of Georgia, who also did not cave, also a Republican, to Donald Trump. But I don't see Pence as a hero personally.
I don't either.
And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people are calling him a hero.
Right.
You're not a hero
For doing this job?
for doing your job. Exactly. You're not a hero
For having integrity.
You're not a hero for following the law. Okay. It's like saying, hey, Yo-Yo, Vanessa, well, let's go down and rob the bank. Come on. You're either going to go down in history, Yo-Yo and Vanessa, if you don't rob this bank with me as a pussy. But if you rob the bank, you're going to be a patriot. Okay. And you don't rob the bank. You follow the law. Why are you a hero?
Doesn't make me a hero. It doesn't make
you a hero. What would have made him a hero? Had he stood up after Charlottesville and told Donald Trump, you're wrong. There are not good people on both sides.
That part.
What would have made him a hero is if they started putting children in cages. He stood up and said, Donald Trump, you're wrong. You don't put children in cages. There were so many times when Mike Pence could have stood up. I think, actually, he is going down in history as a pussy. So, it's my 2 cents on it.
A hero, like you said, a hero isn't someone who is just following the law, who's doing his job. That is what he was sworn into office to do. A hero to me is someone like Stacey Abrams, a shero that went out of her way to make a difference, without anybody asking her to do it or threatening her or any kind of scandal that came with it. That's not a hero.
To me, a hero is somebody who goes against popular opinion and stands up for a position.
Even amongst a large crowd.
Right, who stands up for a position that is against popular opinion. And it turns out that he or she was right.
Right.
That to me is a hero. I can name a few. But that to me is a hero.
That part.
Meanwhile, the Times, to kind of bring this full circle, they're speculating that Pence's break with Trump was because Trump sent the angry crowd into the Capitol. And if you see some of those videos, it was really violent in there.
Yeah.
And he did not stop it. And Pence and many others actually feared for their life, that this mob would kill them. Pence was scared, as well as many other congressmen and senators. And as a matter of fact, Pence didn't speak to Trump for 5 days after this. I think Pence and Trump have a breakup now.
Yeah.
But no hero. Now, just a couple of reminders of what Donald Trump did to incite this. He tweeted right before the big protest. He wrote, "Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there, will be wild." On Wednesday at 1 o'clock, as the joint session began to elect Joe Biden, Trump had just given a 1-hour speech to thousands of supporters when he said, "We're going to go to the Capitol. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country." The president added, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore."
Wow.
Trump then returned to the White House. His supporters began streaming out to the Capitol. The New York Times reported that interviews with at least 15 Trump advisors, members of Congress, GOP officials, and other Trump confidants revealed that Trump was watching TV images of the crisis unfold around them and didn't bother to act to stop the crowd, to stop the vandals, to stop the rioters, to stop the people who actually wanted to overturn the election. He was watching it. He was enjoying it. He was encouraging it. That is why he is impeached, and that's why there could be, criminal liability there too. Now, Trump says, well, I'm going to pardon myself. The Justice Department has already said you can't pardon yourself. Bill Barr, his former U.S. attorney, has said you can't pardon yourself. You can't pardon yourself from your own crimes. But Trump's going to pardon himself anyway. And the reason he's going to pardon himself is because if he is brought to any sort of criminal liability for all of this, he feels he can appeal this for years and years and years, all the way up to the Supreme Court. By the time this case is resolved by appeal, he'd be dead.
Right.
Because he's 74 years old already. Right. So that's probably what his thinking is. But you can't exonerate yourself from your own crimes. That's what a pardon is. I'm exonerating myself from my own crimes.
Like how?
Yeah. Meanwhile, the U.S. Justice Department detailed for the first time on Tuesday the scale of its investigation into last week's U.S. Capitol breach. Officials have opened up over 170 investigations. Authorities have already begun making a slew of arrests in connection with the riot. And one of the rioters, a 53-year-old Christopher Stanton of Georgia, died by suicide on Saturday after shooting himself. Do you know one of the arrestees was an Olympic gold medalist?
What?
That's Cleet Keller, Olympic gold medalist, a swimmer. He was charged with obstructing law enforcement and unlawfully entering the Capitol grounds and disorderly conduct. The U.S. Attorney in Washington, Mikie Sherrill, said the scope of the crimes is mind-blowing. Now, if you see any of the videos, how violent it was in there, it was an insurrection. If you look at some of the videos that were released. Other officials described rioters engaged in open-handed combat with police officers and confirmed they had pipe bombs planted outside Republican and Democratic headquarters. New threats of terrorism are also rolling in ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration, including a plot described by a member of Congress in which thousands of armed extremists would surround the Capitol and prevent Democrats from entering. Meanwhile, YouTube has suspended Trump's channel. Bradshaw Live is still live.
We're still alive.
Still here.
Senator Ted Cruz's communication director, he's been one of Trump's biggest supporters, Blair Bianchi. She has resigned in response to Cruz's effort to overturn the results of the presidential election. Bianchi made the decision because of Cruz's actions last week when he and Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri formally challenged Biden's victories. Now, many staff members, especially junior aides of Ted Cruz and Hawley's offices, are discussing whether their bosses went too far. And a Harvard petition and Yale petition from their law schools, respective law schools, Cruz went to Harvard Law, is making a petition. There's over 7,500 signatures to have Cruz disbarred. He is a disgrace to the legal profession. Kamala Harris, she has started to talk about her and Joe Biden are going to do with immigration laws in the next 100 days. And she's talking about what is called a humane approach. They are going to introduce an immigration reform bill. This is what Kamala Harris said. Within the first 100 days of them taking office, and would grant green cards, allow people who have temporary protected status or had temporary protected status from all the different temporary protected status countries, Haiti, Honduras, El Salvador, there's about 15 of them in total, as well as every person who's been approved for DACA, they will be granted an amnesty, get a green card. It would also include a path to getting a green card for many other millions of people. More than 11 million people may be eligible for this amnesty. We don't know what is involved in the amnesty. I would say this, if you potentially are eligible to apply for DACA, you can do it now. Apply because it may be a lot easier to get a green card as a DACA recipient than as somebody who is not. So just because you are eligible for DACA and didn't do it wouldn't necessarily qualify you for an amnesty that may be coming up. So for everybody out there, if you qualify for DACA and never did it, do it.
Oh, that's
Now,
good.
one of the things that Obama wanted to do in terms of the amnesty that never took off was, after people get a green card, make them wait 13 years from green card to apply for citizenship. Right now, the law is 5 years. So they're going to extend the period based on this of the time period in which you have a green card before you can file for citizenship. They're going to reduce it now, supposedly, from 13 years to 8 years, which is still longer than the 5. The reason is this. The reason they need to extend out citizenship longer, and if this is the price we have to pay to make people legal, to give people dignity, I mean, I think it should stay 5. But if given the choice of no dignity, no legality, versus we'll wait a little longer to become a citizen, I'll take that deal all day long, because the last time there was an amnesty was 1986.
Oh, wow.
I was, in 1986, 17 years old. I had a full head of hair. I don't know if there will be another opportunity for an amnesty. If the trade-off is wait longer to become a citizen, but give everybody the dignity of getting a green card, being able to work legally, not having to worry that they're going to get deported or their family member will get deported, being able to travel home, there's a lot of dignity there.
Yeah.
I'll wait longer. And the reason why, by the way, is for making citizenship longer, is they got to get some moderate Republicans on board. And Republicans are generally scared to give people an amnesty, because most of the people who would get amnesty once they become a citizen of the United States of America would vote Democrat. So the Republicans would be saying, we're going to make 11 million more Democrats, and now less power. So if you make these 11 million people, and by the way, I don't think it's 11 million. I would say it's closer to 40 to 50 million. Let's call it 11.
Yeah.
But if you string it out longer, and you say, okay, it takes a year or two to get a green card. By the time you process the papers and go for the interview, they got to process millions and millions of people, do security checks for millions and millions of people, and then file for citizenship. It'll be 15, 16, 17 years before somebody becomes a citizen and can vote against me. I'll be out of politics by then.
Right.
So that's why they make it palatable to somebody to vote, because if you vote for somebody if you vote for an amnesty and say, I'm going to give this person citizenship in 5 years, then that person is basically saying, I'm voting myself. If I vote for this bill, even if my constituents want it, the people who are going to get the green cards and citizenship are going to vote me out of office. I've just basically, lost my job, which is why the biggest fight is going to be how long from the time somebody gets the green card to somebody can file for citizenship. What Kamala Harris says is going to happen is that the way she describes it, that is not how it's going to happen, because there are senators and members of Congress who will decide the legislation. And it's not a situation where the Democrats have a 60, 70% majority in the Senate. It's 50-50. With the tiebreaker to Kamala. And there are many Democrats who are not necessarily extraordinarily pro-immigrants, come from conservative jurisdictions. And there could be some Republicans who are more liberal when it comes to immigration, depending on what state they're from. So there's going to be a lot. So what Kamala Harris says is this is what it's going to be. Don't count on it. It's going to be something.
Right.
Don't count on it. How many people will be included in this amnesty? We don't know yet. I do know this. Out of every group The number one group that, if there is an amnesty, it will be the DACA recipients for sure. DACA is open right now. So you can definitely apply for DACA.
So Brad, about 20 minutes ago, Trump came on the White House Twitter to condemn the violence and censorship. So this just in while we were talking.
Right, because what happened is he's still able to go on Twitter as under the POTUS, President of the United States tweet.
Right.
Now, when he leaves office, the POTUS Twitter account gets transferred to Joe Biden. It doesn't go with Donald Trump.
Right.
But it's not censorship, Donald Trump. We talked about it already. It is a private company making their own private decisions. And by the way, which we didn't talk about yesterday and I should have, was when we talked about Twitter and Twitter banning Donald Trump, and everyone says, well, there's freedom of speech. But the Supreme Court of the United States says freedom of speech only goes so far. You can't have freedom of speech to incite violence. That is where freedom of speech ends. So you don't have a right to freedom of speech if your speech is going to incite violence. So even if Twitter didn't want to shut him down, inciting violence publicly, you don't have a right to do that.
Right.
So that, the Supreme Court has already come down and said you can't do that. So it's not a right that got taken away from Donald Trump. He was already inciting violence. A throuple, which we learned recently on a different hump day, is a three-people relationship in Seattle, Washington. They're identifying as a fairy, a troll, and a leprechaun.
God.
All right. Basically, it's three wackos who made the news.
Yeah.
The throuple, Princess Fairy Lolly, the troll, and the Eon the leprechaun are living out the fairy tale romance of their dreams. Spellbound by love, the three humans turned mythical creatures are building a dream haven together in their polyamorous relationship. Princess Lolly has explained that we are in what we would call a very closed polycule. We consider ourselves a closed family unit. Lolly first realized she was a mythical marvel many years ago as a youngling. As an adult pixie princess, she met Eon the leprechaun and introduced and indoctrinated him into the world of polyamory. Gunther, a 6'9" mountain troll, he's a big dude.
Yeah,
that's a lot. He takes up a lot of room in that bed.
That's a big troll.
That is a very big troll.
And I thought trolls were supposed to be the small ones.
Yes, no, he is a big troll. He is like Will Ferrell in The Elf.
Right.
It's just, honestly, I want to be this free. Someday I just want to be as free as these folks.
Would you want to be in a throuple?
I don't know about a throuple, but just in a place in life where,
yeah. Do they have a name, by the way? Do they have a name if it's like two men and a woman?
I just want to be unicorn.
You could. What would be a quadruple? Would it be a quadruple? You could join as a unicorn. Look at your picture right there. Nesquik, you gonna join in the throuple?
Right. You have the uniform. You have the uniform.
You have the uniform.
Where was that? Seattle, Washington? I want to just skip around the fields of Seattle, Washington.
Throwing fairy dust.
Meanwhile, former special needs teacher Courtney Tillia has replaced the paycheck she made in front of the chalkboard with a staggering 6-figure income. She gave up teaching, and she's now, I know you guys are going to freak out. You know where she is, making over $100,000 a year?
Let us know.
You know,
yes.
OnlyFans. This used to be a school teacher. She told the New York Post, I make 4 times the annual income I make as a school teacher. I've been making even more money during the pandemic because people are just stuck at home watching my content. Now, outside of posing in lingerie pictures and naughty girl nudes, For her 200,000 online admirers, Tillia is a wife and mother of 4. She's got 4 kids.
Wow.
Wow, she looks
feeding
amazing.
all 4 of them kids.
I feel bad for the kids because they're going to go to school. They're going to be made fun of as they get older. You know,
I mean, maybe at that point she's already stacked up a lot of OnlyFans money, assets.
I mean, honestly, like if she keeps her kids out of, you know, social media, once they grow up, nobody's gonna know. Hey, your mom used to do this. Like 6 years, 7 years later, and they're not gonna be like, "Oh, your mom was the OnlyFans lady."
Yeah, the OnlyFans teacher. Now she was struggling for 4, but now she's cash happy.
Yeah.
She said it didn't happen overnight. She said, I've been teaching special needs students at an alternative school in Phoenix, Arizona for 6 years. I suddenly found myself in a really dark place. I was beginning to hate my job. That darkness began spilling over to other areas of my life. And then she pursued a career in bodybuilding and fitness. And after she pursued a career in fitness, it wasn't until this meeting with a boudoir photographer that the fire in Tillia's soul was reignited. She said, he asked if I wanted to do lingeries or nudes. At first, I was nervous, but once we started, I felt liberated, and then it all went from there.
I think that's an awesome story. If you got it, flaunt it. Like body positivity, you know, women feeling good about their body. She has 4 kids. She's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. I say more power to her.
You got 4 kids to feed. 4 kids to feed.
Right. The thing is, would you want her teaching your special ed child if you? Well,
she's not teaching anybody anymore.
So she can't.
My opinion is not hurting anybody. Go do it. I personally am going to keep my clothes on.
Well, you don't have her body, Brad.
I do not have her body.
I don't have her body. That's why I have my.
She doesn't have my brain. People watch me for brain.
That part. That part.
They watch me for the brain.
There you go.
And that lasts
every day,
a lot longer.
Every day, people turn on Bradshaw Live and say, "Look at the big brain on Brad."
There you go.
Look at the big brain on Brad. You know where that's from?
Where?
Oh, you don't know that?
I forgot. I feel like I heard that somewhere.
Samuel Jackson.
Oh, what movie? Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
The big brain on Brad. Boom, and he shoots the guy.
Yes.
And then Brad's dead. Rachel Yucatel, one of the many women whom Tiger Woods had an affair with while married, ex-wife Elin Nordegren, said her life has been a living hell for years since that scandal broke. She explained to Extra why she's finally breaking her silence 10 years later, saying, I needed to take the shackles off and be able to tell my story. I've spent years under the shame of what's been going on. The 45-year-old said she felt shame for having an affair with a married man, but that's for me to deal with, and does not feel it was fair to be vilified by the media. One moment doesn't define your life, and I don't like to be branded as a mistress. I don't like to be branded as a homewrecker. That's not who I am. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I made a wrong turn 10 years ago. I didn't throw somebody down the stairs. I didn't kill somebody. I made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes.
Girl, poof pow.
What do you think?
Poof pow. Poof pow. Like, listen, I don't give a damn what you think. I don't care if you didn't throw anybody down the stairs. You broke up a family. You slept with a married man. Tiger Woods ain't no Idris Elba. He's no Obama. He's not like the finest man on earth. So you knew exactly what you was doing when you was sleeping with him.
And by the way, it wasn't a one-time,
exactly.
Bam, bam, thank you, ma'am. It was a relationship they were having.
This man had kids with this lady.
Right?
Yeah. Like,
it was a relationship that they had. So it wasn't a one moment in their life, but certainly
she knew what she was doing.
Certainly a huge mistake.
Yeah, it's not a mistake when you keep on doing it. She kept on doing it.
Consciously.
Yes.
You know what you're doing.
All right, and finally, Kayla MacArthur, Ryan Crane, they met on Zoom, and now they are real life sweethearts. It's called a Zoom romance. After meeting on Zoom, the pandemic block lovers relocated from Massachusetts to Mexico so they could live together. MacArthur and Crane meshed right away after being set up on a Zoom coffee date by a mutual friend in June.
Zoom coffee date.
When Ryan's face appeared on my screen, I felt attracted to him. As we spoke, I realized he was as passionate about traveling as I was. Before lockdown, he went on a solo trip around the world. Crane, a wellness manager who sold all his possessions to travel the world in 2018, was just as impressed with MacArthur, who spent several weeks in Bali. Although I went into the conversation thinking it would be more of a friend connection, I did immediately notice how beautiful she was, and I was very attracted to her. After, they call it zating. Have you ever heard that term?
Nope, never.
No, but
It is dating.
it makes sense.
It's a Zoom date. It's called have a zate. It's like we have a zate with the squad every day.
Right.
So it's zating for a few months. In August, the digital darlings decided to ditch their desktops and just do it. And
Wow.
they made a human connection. They flew to Mexico, and they've been living there ever since. Crane said, when we met for the first time in our Airbnb living room, I remember thinking that she had a glowing energy. She had bought me eggs and some fruit for breakfast from the day before, so I knew
Romantic.
she was a very thoughtful person. The couple kept their relationship casual, but Crane was sure he'd fallen for her after only 2 weeks of living together. He asked MacArthur on a date. She was hesitant. I wasn't as sure if Ryan was the one for me. It wasn't until Crane left for a weekend trip to Acamal, a small town on Mexico's Riviera Maya, that MacArthur realized he was her forever man. While Ryan was away, all the pressure disappeared, and I realized how much I missed him.
Wow.
Isn't that a great zating story?
That is awesome.
It was love at first sight.
Love at first sight. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.